work?
Sorry, guys, I've been trying to help Lynn with her audio. She's going to log out and try to get back in. Her microphone's not picking up.
Oh, no. Okay.
Huh.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Actually, the minutes are from Debbie.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much, Debbie. They were quite comprehensive. Any comments or corrections, notes on the minutes?
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that's unanimous too. All right. So this takes us to the meat of the meeting here. Oops, I'm on my agenda. They're all got like 10 copies of the minutes now. All right. The big work in front of us is the 23 budget. And I don't know, Lynn, are you back with us?
If I could jump in, there was a note from Debbie that she put in the chat because again, Dan was off trying to help Lynn. I think he didn't start the recording. And so looked like Debbie was asking for a redo of the agenda amendment because it was recorded.
We did it in no time the first time. I'm sure we can do it again. Why don't I, just for the sake of the public, I will, since we didn't record it initially, I'll call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. And I will ask for one change to the agenda, which is adding a number 3 under the finance report to kind of work together to coalesce my report back to the full board, since we have some meaty budget items to address. And I would call for or wonder if anyone would.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the agenda with that adjustment.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then now we'll redo this since it wasn't recorded. We've got the minutes from April 13th Finance Committee to consider. Any modifications or changes, or I'd welcome a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of April 13th as presented. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes unanimously. Now, thank you, Debbie. I think we're caught up with ourselves now. Sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit. We've got the federal, the fiscal year 23 budget to go over. And I guess my big question is it June when the board has to make kind of the decision on the CPI decision? So today is still informational for both this group and the board. And then that decision point comes in June.
Yes, I'll notice that Lynn isn't on, so I don't know if she's still having trouble. Dan, did you know, are you there? Is Lynn still having trouble?
And Greg, while they're doing that, we are kind of, because it's so big, Jeff and I talked about, if the board needs more discussion at a minimum in June, we'll have to, pass a motion authorizing a continuation of the current budget until we adopt one, so that they have expenditure power. But otherwise, ideally, we would be in a place where we're making a recommendation today, but we could do it right before the board meeting, as long as we don't change a whole bunch, so Lynn doesn't have to, retool all the documents before the board meeting.
So am I to understand then that this group is going to kind of recommend which full budget that Lynn pursues, and then that will be presented to the
Correct.
board? Okay, gotcha. Well, I guess while we're waiting for Lynn, I don't know, Randy, did you have a chance to look at the 5-page budget presentation?
Not in depth, so I'll be listening to some of what we're saying.
Okay. Well, there was a great 2-page fact sheet that Lynn prepared to kind of talk about the rationale behind some of the big changes. But there are 3 options in front of us. So I'm just kind of riffing while we wait for Lynn to make a more organized presentation. And the big decision point in front of us is, do we use a CPI of 3%, of 5.2%, or 5.2% on fees and 3% on expenses?
Yep, and I can say that again, while Lynn's connecting to audio, it looks like she's back. Hopefully her audio is working, going to be working this time. But I mean, again, we took the conversation that we had last month and zeroed in on the options that we understood that you were looking for. So that's again why we've got these three options. The option one, straight 3%, option two, 5.2%, and then three is a mix of the 3% and the 5.2%. And then Lynn also prepared the 5-year budget forecast, which I think Jim had asked for, and again to look at what's happening with our contingency funds over time. So,
And which of the options was in that 5-year forecast?
so it factors in option two. I think the 5.2% fee and salary, based on the conversation that we had last month, that's where it seemed like things were likely going, and actually that would be my recommendation. I think it keeps the fee increase less than the CPI. I know that there was some concern about, just continuing to raise the fees at the high level, but it does increase it to help keep pace with agencies' increasing costs. And while the salary increase is less than the CPI, it is helping to keep pace with increasing costs. And as we discussed last month, with doing the salary survey in this fiscal year, there will be a mechanism to make adjustments. Again, if the salary survey results come back and realize that certain positions are behind where they need to be. So I guess it's the 5.2% that I'll recommend. I'll also note that all three options do draw on the general fund contingency. But again, in my mind, these are important and very worthwhile investments in the agency. I can just highlighting kind of the main differences. One, again, all of this is described in Lynn's document, but a couple highlights are that
she's alive. She's back.
Yay!
Sorry.
No problem, Lynn.
And just so you know, because it may streamline things, Jim converted me the last time. I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't shifted from that. So his logic made perfect sense. So I'm still in favor of the hybrid.
The hybrid or the straight, the 5.2%, or the like across for both salary and fees?
Yeah, if I'm Jim,
Okay.
you were talking about the cross between the two, right? The last time, and that was your argument was based on that, right?
I'm trying to remember what I said. I know we talked all around out around the barn in that
Jim.
conversation.
It was brilliant. How could you not remember?
We'll have to consult the minutes.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I guess just because you asked, when I'm looking at this, I'm pretty solidly in option two, which is the 5.2 for both.
Yeah.
But we have a revenue problem long term when I look at it.
I thought, if I remember though, I thought it was the combination of the two the last time.
Oh, I don't remember being solid on that. I mean, I think when you prod me like that, I think I was. No, I think I was thinking about the bottom line on that idea and wanted to see it. But when I look at the salaries and the salary survey, I just worry about being too far behind by staying low on the COLAs. So, but I know that that's
and remember,
not the same as what happens everywhere. Like it's different all over the region.
Yeah, and I don't even believe in the COLAs at all.
Right. Well, I know that. So.
Yeah, everybody's gotten rid of it. Everybody has been getting those out of their contracts, and I know we have none left in Mason County. That's been the way it's been moving for quite a while. So I guess we will be. It's funny too, because I was on the low end the first time, but I moved up to be in the hybrid, and I'm still I can still support the hybrid. I have a hard time moving to the higher end. Just my opinion.
So Randy, you're looking at option two. Is that how I hear you?
I believe that's what it was. Yeah, it's hard to do it from where I'm at right now to see what the options were, but it was the hybrid one that was the I think it was 5 and 3 or 5 and 2.5.
That's option
Option 3. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure I'm understanding and hearing. Okay, option 3. Okay.
All right. Well, Lynn, do you want to take over and kind of go through the budget summary and budget forecast document that we have here, and we can continue this conversation, which is an important one, but I want to make sure that we have all the data in front of us.
You bet. I'm happy to do that. Sorry for the confusion this morning. We're back on track. So we had previously provided 4 options to the board. The board sent staff back to provide a revised version. Option 1 and 2 are the same from last month's April finance meeting. Option 1 was 3% fee increase, 3% salary increases. Option 2 still remains the same, 5.2% increase fees, same thing as salary increases. The new option 3 is a hybrid of 5.2% in fees, 3% in salary enhancements. Looking at the draw that ORCAA will be taking from our general fund contingency, it doesn't make a significant difference. Option 1, we're taking $299,000. Option 2, $303,000, and option 3, it's a draw of $262,000. And
Lynn, can I ask, why are we taking more money with option 3 than option 2 than option 3? I don't understand.
The employee
because
part
the
goes down.
expenses.
Oh, right, because expenses aren't up. Yeah, duh, that makes perfect sense. Okay,
That's
sorry,
right.
I just
Yeah,
flipped in my
it's kind of
head.
interesting.
I did that too,
We're
Greg,
taking-
the exact same thing. Yeah.
No, good question. So really, option 3 is a combination of both 1 and 2, right?
Mhm.
Because of the revenue is the same in option 2 and 3, and then the expenditures are the same as 1 and 3. And so we are looking at as I indicated, a draw which is very similar, the highest being obviously option 2. And we've already gone through all of our revenue lines and our expenditure lines at the previous meeting in April. Unless there's something you would like me to highlight, again, I'm happy to do so. Questions? Because at this point, I'm hearing option 2 or 3 is a mix right now, where our committee is. And it might be helpful eventually to go to the 5-year forecast to make your final decision. But as Greg indicated, the summary indicates that highlights of our budget, most of them we've already gone through. There's just been some changes to the contingency draws. And in terms of the 5-year forecast, that definitely comes into play here on the long term, as Jim indicated. That's going to be helpful for your eyes to see probably before going forward.
Mhm. I mean, so am I reading the 5-year projection right? I know this is option 2 going through, but we're gonna continue to draw between, 245 and 300,000 every year.
Correct.
Well, I think
That
it
is correct.
depends. I mean, that's what we're forecasting, but again, I think, and Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, the 22 budget, there was a projected contingency draw, but we ended up not having a contingency draw.
And
And
that's
so-
been accurate since 2017.
I was gonna say, longer than that, the whole 10 years I've been on the board, and there was,
Okay, if you
and
wanna
I
go
don't
back-
think we've ever drawn.
Right, so the last time we actually had a draw on our contingency was in 2016.
Okay.
We budgeted 170,000, we used 77. However, since fiscal year 2017, we budgeted anywhere between, I'm going to use 2018. That'll take us, 5 years. From fiscal year 2018, we budgeted at least 122,000 up to 250,000 and did not use any contingency draws. Instead, we were able to place money back into our general fund to be used for the following year. So fiscal year 2022, we have budgeted 209,000, and my forecast reflects an $87,000 payback to our general fund. And that's as a result of, we've had staff turnover, we've had a delay in the purchase of our vehicle, a delay in the expenses for leasehold improvements, which included, change out of an HVAC. It also includes the payment to our prior executive director. So there's been a lot of money that's come and gone and not.
Well,
Mhm.
Sorry, Lynn, sorry to interrupt, but another factor is the fact that we've got, we've had some relatively large notices of violation that of course we factor those. I think what we count on is roughly $75,000 a year, which is the 10-year average. So I certainly don't want to base, and that's the appropriate, I think, number to include for looking at our budget and doing our budget planning. But also the fact is, in the current year, in 2022, we've had a lot more than that, and we've issued some large penalties. So we're likely in fiscal year 23 to have some significant additional money coming in as well. And I'll note that, in the past, we might not have had contingency draws, but there's certain things that, because of COVID and other reasons that the agency hasn't moved forward on, but I am planning on moving forward on. Because I think there's some things that we've got some deferred maintenance, some deferred investments. And so frankly, if we're not going into contingency funds in fiscal year 23, then either we got a lot more fines than we were expecting, or I think I haven't done a sufficient job of moving some of these projects forward.
Well, I just want to point out, Jeff, too, that, in this picture, that final 5-year deficit of 480,000, 300 of that has actually moved up into the reserves and it hasn't been spent. So that allows for building money that we've been spending in the annual budget and not tapping into that reserve, for instance, as we move along. So part of that is a better cushion for hard times in those reserves.
Right.
Correct. Good point. Yes.
Can you point out, Lynn, where the reserves are indicated on this, the budget with the options?
So on page 2, on the fund balance.
Gotcha, yeah.
Bottom right green
Oh,
box.
yes. So on option 1, 2, and 3, you'll notice that we're using contingency draw of almost 300,000, option 1. And option 2, 303,000. And then for option 3, 262,000. Near the bottom, you'll see there is a line that says committed, restricted, designated funds. In option 1, we have a little over $1 million in designated funds by the board direction. $716,000 is undesignated. Keeping in mind the $716,000 that is undesignated for later use at board direction. In the meantime, we're holding $1 million in various contingency funds. We have that emergency fund that the board designated 20% of our expenditures. Now that's, catastrophe. We have to move someplace in order to maintain our business operations. And this also doesn't mean that the board cannot reallocate the capital funds of, the office building, 120,000, monitoring, database. You can reallocate those funds by a new resolution and a new reallocation. So there is flexibility. Does that help?
Very helpful. Thank you, Lynn.
Yes.
Randy,
Would you like to add in? Sorry.
Lynn, I'd like to just put out there that I remember when I first came in and I saw how you budgeted, I just looked at the straight numbers and was concerned. After working with you, I have learned that you do things in a way that protect us over and over again. And although it looks like that going in, uh, it doesn't end up like that at the end of the year with you, which is how I prefer to budget. So please don't take that as a bad thing. It's the opposite. And so I'm taking that into account when I was making my decision, if you want to call it that. Or my point. Yeah.
Well, Randy, does it, I guess, open you up to option 2 anymore? You know, hearing Jeff talk about the kind of the deferred projects that he really wants to push right now, maybe changing the, the expenditure side of it compared to.
Not really, and the reason why it is twofold. One, as was pointed out, reallocation, but we try to live within our means, and sometimes we make the decisions as they're in front of us. But you have to go in holding the reins tight in order to keep them tight at the end. As the things get needed and he starts to move forward, some of it will happen, some of it won't. If we get to the point partway through the year where it really looks like it is absolutely necessary, then we have those conversations. But like as you know from the very first meeting there, I'm usually on the stricter side. But the argument was so good I couldn't get past that, so I moved to the middle, but I'm still in the middle.
Okay, and I guess so far based on our conversation today, I'm leaning more to option 2. But I'd love to hear Jeff talk a little bit more about why that ended up being your recommendation, Jeff.
Well, so again, the difference between option 2 and option 3 is the fact that option 2 has the 5.2% salary increase, and whereas option 3 has just has a 3% salary increase. And at a conversation with the Washington Air director, so other local airs last week, we were sharing sort of all of the budget conversations from the other agencies. Some locals have not been able to have these annual salary increases, and so they're way behind. And so they're looking at doing a salary survey to see where they are. But then if they get those results, then it will be very hard and painful to catch up. And so I guess my thinking is, and recommendation on the 5.2% is that, well, that will, again, it's below CPI is, but it's closer, and it will then, and it sort of, it automatically budgets that in. Whereas if we do the salary survey and then find out that, well, that again, we've got more adjustments that we need to fold in, that we'll have to then make more likely that we'll have to make a budget adjustment going forward. And so it just kind of plans for it. But again, as I mentioned last month, if you feel that the safest option is to just have the 3% at this point, and then let the results from the salary survey come in, and then figure out how to, again, adjust the compensation so that ORCAA can remain a competitive and an attractive place to work, then we could make that adjustment at that time. But that's why I was recommending the 5.2%, is just to kind of make sure that we're keeping up, and so that we're less likely to have a bigger adjustment later in the year.
Mr. Chair, may I step in for a second?
Please, Randy.
So I pretty much been handling our negotiations for the last 10 years, been the lead point on it within the commission. This year, we're going to extend up to probably 2.25. We may go with the Teamsters as high as 2.5. The one thing about salary surveys is you do that doesn't mean you have to adjust to it. That's the big flaw that every leader ends up running into. And it creates a cycle where it just keeps happening to you. As you keep bumping it up, you bump everybody up. You can't just do it that way. You have to keep it separate and look at what's actually needed for the industry, for the company. Other than that, it'll just always spiral out of control. We've been pretty good about doing that in this committee, in the past, even with the salary for the executive director. It's easy to go ahead and say we can just go there and we put us up there in the middle or the high but it doesn't really work that way in the real world, though. You can tell when you have the stresses when people do start to try and leave. You have to be a little more interactive, I guess, is my opinion, when it comes to negotiation and creating salaries, not just throwing it out there and feeding the cycle to keep making it get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
I certainly would want to be deliberative. And again, depending upon what the salary survey comes back with. And again, we'll want to look carefully at that and not necessarily assume, okay, well, this means, X increase. And so obviously I'll work closely with you all and the rest of the board on that moving forward. So but I hear what you're saying, Randy.
And I guess I don't know, I'm a little conflicted on this. We've seen our county has certainly been on the lower end of pay for a long time, and it's hard to stop the bleeding once you start losing folks, and backfilling is a much more challenging than keeping people happy. And not to put too fine a point on it, but Randy brought up our new executive director pay, and I think being moving with that is probably a big morale boost, and I feel like the impact of that goes farther than the savings of keeping salaries or bumping salaries 3%. I mean, we have a lot of retirements coming in ORCAA, and so we're going to have to replace those folks anyways, and it's hard to hire right now. So I guess I'm not sure, like Jeff, if we can't come to consensus today, should we still make a recommendation, or do we have another meeting to try to build consensus in this group?
I don't think, and I'll look to Debbie or Lynn to chime in, but I don't think that we've got at this point, a finance committee meeting scheduled in June, but we could, even if there isn't one scheduled, I don't know why we couldn't schedule one if we think that we need one to talk more about it, so that this group is ready to make a recommendation to the board.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Well, I just want to clarify one thing first. I win some and I lose some.
And that's what I was going to say. One thing I know about Randy is he'll be okay if we take a vote, and he'll be supportive of the direction of the body. Like that's just like we would if we were on the other side.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, but I hope you do listen to me on this, because this will actually set up a foundation for the future. It's what we've always done anyway, kind of. We've been smarter that way with doing this. Once you open the door like this, it will start to change quickly. Once a CPI, and we start going leaning towards COLA and even making it look like COLA, that animal is hard to control once it gets out there. Again, this is the one thing I have been doing for all these years, not just before I was a county commissioner. I've done it in the different organizations and companies, and I'm just kind of trying to give you my very best advice. If something drastic does happen in the salary surveys, then of course adjustments can be made. The most likely outcome is, though, you do the salary survey, you see the adjustment, and that's made and prepared for the next year, not prepared, not front loaded.
So, Lynn, how much was the CPI last year?
Well, we 1.4% for fiscal year 2021. I'm sorry, that's the current year we're in. The board approved a 1.4% COLA consistent with the CPI.
Okay.
The prior year was 1.5. So.
Okay.
We have. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little bit conflicted. Like I definitely understand kind of where Randy's coming from. When I'm looking at the long-term picture, I think there's a lot of uncertainty in it. And, how much more efficient will we be with these efficiencies that Jeff is putting into this budget for the next, 2 years? Just unloading and cleaning up our way of doing records management will make the organization more efficient over time, and maybe help us, stay ahead of the growth of costs a little bit. And the retirements that were mentioned, those are sort of uncertainties about what the costs will be and what we'll need to do to attract new folks. I looked, and a 3%, I think for me, it's really important. One of the more, as important as the entire salary survey, and as a reminder, last time we did that in 2 years. So it wasn't immediately. We planned for it over the course of 2 or maybe even 3 years. And
it was 3.
3 years. Okay. And so I feel like, once we see that, we can look at how to implement it. The other thing is, being competitive in the labor market. And in our, right now our labor market is Olympia, and we are highly competitive with the state and the other governments here. And all of the Olympia employees are getting 4. The state got 3.5. And so I won't support anything that's lower than the state employees, because they are, as we saw with Jeff, all of our finalists were state employees, and we were able to attract a killer pool because of where we're able to be with our salaries. And so to me, it's important to try and stay as close to the CPI as we possibly can every year, realizing that, while we know it costs that much, the 7 just, isn't practical, for lack of a better word.
Can
You
we
know,
meet
so-
in the middle? Can we meet at your minimum then of 3.5?
Well, so actually was gonna say, what can we meet at 4? And that keeps us slightly ahead of the state, but helps
know.
our long-term budget picture just slightly. Like, I'd
So-
love it if we came with a unanimous recommendation.
And I would too. That's why I'm willing to go up to the 3.5, because that is, you're doing the same as the state. I don't know why we have to feel like we have to be above that. In your other counties that are right next door, like I said, for the last several years, it's been 1.25, 1.5. We are bringing it up to 2 and 2.25. So even though I know it's always nice to say this is our competitor, you also have a competitor comparable right next door that's way below that. If you brought it up to the state level of 3.5, I'd say that would be fair. Other than that, I think we'd be going excessive when it's not needed yet.
Well,
You
the
guys
only
split
other
the
comment I
difference
would
at
say is, when I think
3.75?
about our employees, if they don't make 7, they're losing money.
Again, though, you can keep doing that one. I'm not a believer in that line. I just never have been, because it feeds itself. I've seen it over and over again, and this world is going to take other turns. You can't keep adjusting regularly for that, because next year you're going to watch it's going to go up to 12. We can't do that.
I agree with Randy on that. I think it does feed inflation, when, I think it's the snake eating its own tail there a little bit.
But I can smile at 3.5. I honestly can. I wouldn't even balk at it. Anything more than that, though, and like I said, I'm coming up on even on that one, but that argument makes sense. It's right there with what you have for your true competitors right there, even though there are some that are less. I would be comfortable with 3.5.
I haven't made a suggestion yet. How about 3.75 and split it? So we're slightly ahead of the state, but
I'm sorry, but I'm still at 3.5. I just came up a whole half point from you. That's an amazing feat. Sorry.
fair enough. What do you think, Jim?
I don't want to go below 4, and honestly, 5 is easier because it's already calculated. Like, we're not going to be ahead.
All right, well, let's see. I don't know. Lynn, do you want to take, or I think still mulling this over, obviously. I like that 4 too, but do you have any more that you wanted to go over on the 5-year budget forecast?
Let's see, the 5-year, I'm pulling it up here. So, let me pull it up, 5-year. There's not a lot that I would consider highlighting at this point, with the exception of the factor that ORCAA used to increase revenue from one year to the next. We utilized a 2% fee increase. We also, on the expenditure side, implemented a 2% increase in salary and 4 to 5 increase in benefits. And when you consider looking at the fund balance draws from 2023 through 2027, yes, Greg already brought up, we're using anywhere between 235 to 316,000. Our restricted designated funds continue to increase, though the undesignated fund balance decreases. When you look at our backup from 2005, I'm using 2005 through present, the times that ORCAA had to access the draw, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. That's pretty incredible. And is it tight budgeting? Likely. Is it taking away some of the tools our staff need? Probably. Is it we're all in this together, we're all working it, all the team, the full agency. We communicate with the team, so they're all on board with how we are trying to administer our program. So I'm just putting a plug in there. You know, staff work hard. I'm not choosing the option. That's our boss's job, you. But we keep in close contact with our staff. Staff work hard, and we have I think a surprising forecast. When I completed the forecast, I was actually kind of surprised myself. I thought we would be in a deficit position a lot earlier than expected with the undesignated fund balance. Considering, you know, we're a small agency, issues are going to hit us a lot quicker, yes, but we're planning, we're anticipating, and we monitor it on a regular basis. Jeff, can you add to that?
No, I think that's a good summary. I mean, you know, obviously I'm relatively still new, about 90 days into this, but the agency is very careful with money. Lynn, Fran, the team just managed it very well. And I think we are in a really good position. Again, as I've mentioned, I think that it's worth making some adjustments or making some additional investments in the agency. And we're hope it's $25,000 for for an updated website. We need to make some IT hardware upgrades. I've also added, at least on a 2-year basis, a project position, a 17th person, a records position to help us get caught up on records and also free up some of Debbie's capacity so that she can be helping to manage update to our database. So I think that there's some investments we need to make in our future, but I think that we're in a really good place financially to do that.
Great. Okay, well, we still have one more item on the agenda, but I feel like we should probably finish our conversation about our recommendation to the board first.
Can I throw in one last piece then?
Please, Randy.
Okay, so the thing we're discussing, I want to explain that it's bigger than what you're focusing on. Yes, this organization may be located in that Olympia area, so we could move it. But my point is you're being represented by a group of organizations that are not all in Olympia. Okay, my Teamsters are going to get most likely 2.25. That if we did a 5, for example, that's more than twice what my Teamsters are going to be getting this year. That doesn't make sense to me, and it won't make sense to the county or my Teamsters as that comes out. Grays Harbor, I'm pretty sure are going to be doing the same thing. They're pretty close to the same as what we're doing. Greg, only you know what you're doing in yours.
We're doing 3.5 for 3 years.
Yeah, so 3.5 for 3 years. That's much higher than us, but you guys are a little bit kinder than that. That's still the amount that I'm talking about is 3.5.
Yeah, well, I mean, for 3 straight years, but we also have, 27 jobs and have had it open and have had a planning director position open for 2 years. So I just, backfilling is so much more challenging.
Yeah, and that's what maybe why you're raising it up, but that's also has more to do with your location. Same thing as mine is a little bit different than that. But my point is, this is what this county is giving. This is what the other counties are giving. It makes no sense to go above that, especially by a long shot. As I said, I could go with the 3.5, which is what you're doing over 3 years. We set this up as it changes. They may end up with more the next year, more the year after that, especially if we start to consider anything that looks like a COLA. So with my final argument on that, I want to just point out, we're represented by many different areas, not just the one. And we need to be competitive and give the ability for these other counties to have a reason for saying that we're keeping things fair. For me, it would be way outside my bounds at 5, because that's more than double what I'm doing for my Teamsters. So I have a hard time with a 3. I have a much harder time with a 3.5, but anything above that is just seems to be way out of the spectrum. And even you in your county, who is known to be more giving when it comes to that this year, even that is above yours. So that's why I can still settle with a 3.5. That's my final argument.
Thanks, Randy.
Yeah, and just based on the conversation, I think I could solidly be a 4 and make that recommendation if that's where you are, Greg. All of the points Randy makes, have validity, and long term we could think about picking up and moving to another market, but it has all kinds of other implications.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, fundamentally as a climate and clean air agency, the further behind we are on pay, the further our employees will be driving to work because they won't stay in the county that we're headquartered in. And that's why Olympia got to 4 in all of its negotiations for this year. And, another thing that we've done is have, revenue bonuses in our COLAs. So they go up higher if our revenue hits certain targets as well. Now, I don't think we don't really have that, because we tied it to sales tax,
Right.
Coming out of the recession. But so I like a 4 right now. And if that feels comfortable to me and isn't higher than anything we're seeing in our market.
I mean, I take Randy's point, and I understand this is a six counties working together right now. So, but we are, as Jim says, competing with state agencies for our staff. We're not.
Well, wasn't the state at 3.5? Isn't that what you said earlier? Because I understand that argument, but I thought you said the state did a 3.5.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see a dissonance too with when we increase our executive director so much. And I mean, I think there's an equity issue to bump that position. What did we go up? 35% or something like that?
We should also note that I talked to Jeff, and this keeps his salary at the negotiated rate until we get to his annual review. So it doesn't bump him with a COLA.
Yeah, the way I read the contract, I don't think so. I'm not going to take a salary increase until we negotiate again until we negotiate my next contract.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm wavering right now between Jim and Randy. But I mean, 3.5. I could live with that, but I just see that dissonance is pretty strong with me. But setting precedent, I understand Randy's points with that. I mean, I guess I could. If we're gonna make a decision today, I guess I would go with 4% and not have a. I mean, I don't think we're gonna get a consensus either way. But come down from the 5.2.
And however we do that, like I said, I'm not gonna run out screaming and saying Mason County has to leave. But I can tell you one last time though, if your competitor is which is the state employees is 3.5, and you're going to go above that, that's more than excessive, especially when your surrounding counties that feed into this are going to be doing 2.25. It's extremely excessive if you're trying to go above the state. That just seems like it's a personal choice. We just want to make everybody happy. That's never been how we've done things in the past. The one thing I've always stood against when it does come up because this organization has been good about that, been conservative that way, if you want to say. So I just want to, I hope that you will consider that, because literally, I don't see any reason why we should be giving larger raises than the state.
Well, we have a universe that we can control way more than the state. I think that's, part of it. Like, we don't have to negotiate with a legislature. We can see, in our region, the real cost growth. And yeah, I just, to me, 4 is as low as I'll go, because it feels like a sweet spot in the conversation. And I think anything we do above 7 or under 7.2 or whatever that was is a loss for our employees. And so, Greg, I'd like to make a motion, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think we've all expressed our opinions. Go ahead.
So I move to forward a budget recommendation to the board, similar to option 2, only correcting it or recalculating it to be a 4% COLA for the employees instead of a 5.2%.
Can I have a clarification on that? Are we going to call it a COLA?
That's our practice. So I think that's a different policy conversation. But, to your point, I mean, this is also, a kick-ass thing, because our employees have been doing amazing. And if we had low performing employees, it would be, might be a different conversation. So to me, this is as much about merit and making sure that we keep up with the cost of living, whatever you call it.
We can call it 4% expenses.
There you go.
Salary adjustment.
Salary adjustment.
Okay. So the motion is to move to the board that we modify. It's really probably easiest to modify option 3, which has the variables in it, to
That makes sense.
To 4% instead of 3% for expenses.
I'll take that amendment.
I will second that motion. Any further comments, questions? All right, I guess I'll call the question. All in favor of making the recommendation for option 3, changing 3% to 4% for expenses, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. All right. Well, I think, yeah, that's, I love to work to consensus, but this is, I think we at least split the difference a little bit. So I really appreciate your input, Randy, and appreciate the different perspective that brought that vote. So,
hey, yeah, we saved $40,000 by coming down. So.
Okay, so I think the last item on the agenda is just to kind of my finance report for today. And so I guess I'd open it up to others first. I mean, I'm always happy to spout stuff, but what should I make sure not to miss? I guess our conversation about our recommendation, is that something that should be reflected?
Yeah, and I think it's important to capture this tension, because it's there and it's real. And then there's a couple of big highlights that Jeff mentioned in the beginning, which were the website and the strategic
IT
planning.
Yep.
And the records person. Is that all of them, Jeff?
Yeah, the salary survey.
Salary survey.
I mean, is in there. So yeah, let's see. I mean, I think the 17th position, significant new investments. I mean, we've essentially doubled the IT budget from one year to the next to allow, again, purchasing IT equipment for our conference room so that we can effectively host hybrid meetings. And again, we've got a lot of deferred maintenance on computers. We're going to be making an order here in the next couple of weeks just to try to get, because people aren't able to do their jobs effectively because of computer issues. Then the $25,000 for the new website, $5,000 for the salary survey, and $8,000 for strategic planning effort in the next year. I think are the big ones.
Okay.
If I can, I'd like to make a recommendation of a change of what we just discussed. Although we know how I feel about this situation, if I think we should just go along the line, say it was a spirited discussion. If we break it out to where we are explaining it back and forth, then I'm going to want to try to change the room and
Yeah.
give my full battle, and I don't think that's necessary. I think if you just mentioned that, we had a spirit discussion that ended up on this, I'll be comfortable with that discussion, and I won't have to try and sway the counties like Grace Harbor and stuff like myself that are in a different financial situation. I'll be leaving it up to them to do their own argument. If that argument comes up, then it'd be different to put my 2 cents in, but I'm comfortable with the work we did, the discussions we've had. I may not like the outcome, but I'm comfortable with it, and I think I prefer if we handle it that way.
Thank you, Randy.
Yep, no, that sounds wise. Thank you, Randy. That's a good,
The one other major thing this budget does is pay off our building.
That's a positive
Yes.
highlight.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Because that captures about half of the increases in the new things. The non-staff new things.
okay, so we'll talk about the goals, and I think you said it well earlier, Jeff, talking about how, if we don't make these pushes, then we're not getting work done that needs to be done. And I think that's an important point. So that's kind of how I'll lead that off. And please, I would welcome, if I mischaracterize or miss anything, please, any of you, feel free to interject during that to correct any mischaracterizations. Okay, I mean, I think I feel comfortable for the report, and I felt like this was productive. So yeah, moving forward. Thank you, Lynn and Jeff, for all your work. And I guess we're meeting in the same meeting room for the board meeting, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
So we had talked earlier about the possibility of needing to have an additional finance committee meeting. Is that still feeling? I mean, I think so. No. Okay, I didn't think so.
No.
Just wanted to make sure we're clear.
yep.
Yeah, I would say if you want to just send us the updated single budget sheet in case there's any last comments or questions over email, that just
Okay.
cover that base.
Well, do we want to just go ahead and make a motion to move all this forward,
We did.
as amended?
We did.
We did.
We did. Because I know we did the pay.
That was the whole budget. It was the option 3 of the budget with changing the COLA. So I think we did.
Yeah, we didn't call it a COLA.
We didn't call it a COLA. No.
No,
we
with the
just-
salary adjustments. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. I just want to.
Lynn's doing search and find and replace on all of her documents.
Oh no, we've stayed away. That's something that Fran and Lynn have warned me about for more than 90 days. Is salary adjustments is what we call it.
Perfect.
And and like I said, I'm comfortable with this is our recommendation for the whole thing with the board, and let's get it adopted as soon as we can, and deal with the next hurdle that we have coming up instead of having another meeting. I don't mind having another meeting anytime you want. That ain't what I meant. I just wanted to
So
say.
Randy, if I made another motion to forward the whole package as amended, would that get us a unanimous vote from the committee?
Yes, it would.
I move to forward the budget package as amended to the board of directors next month, and I'm excited about that.
I'll second.
All right. Yeah, that's great. All in favor of the motion of forwarding the entire packet with the 4% for expenses, 5.2% for revenue, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hey, that's great. Thanks, Jim, yeah, good. I'm glad we clarified issues and got through that. So feels a lot better to bring a consensus recommendation for.
Thank you, Randy.
My pleasure.
Okay, well, everyone, 3 minutes. If you need to use the restrooms, do it fast. We'll see you in a little bit.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.